Few eateries get tourist traffic like the Union Oyster House, but just because the 190-year-old restaurant is considered a must-see in some travel circles, that doesn't mean the food is any good, as one very sharply worded review pointed out. It's got the history, it's got the location, it's got the colonial ambiance. What it lacks? Decent food. That's the takeaway in a biting restaurant review by Boston Globe reporter Nestor Ramos, basically dismissing Ye Olde Joint as a tourist trap. A Union Oyster House manager fired back, calling the Globe review petty, vitriolic, and a journalistic sucker punch. But Globe editor Brian McGrory is standing by Ramos.
He wrote a hard-hitting but seemingly justified review of the Union Oyster House from his perspective.
It probably just comes down to a matter of taste. I think one of the big question marks about this is why bother, reviewing the Union Oyster House? And anybody who's ever been there knows it's marginal at best. So what's the point? It's been here it is what it is, and it is a tourist trap. What's wrong with calling it a tourist trap?
It's nothing wrong with calling it a tourist trap, but you should know what you're getting. For years I used to go to Top of the Hub, and that food was horrible. Horrible. It is now delicious. People don't write me. Yeah. It's delicious and fabulous. So they made an effort to change that.
And a great view.
And a great view. It always had the view.
Yeah.
So, but if you just want to be a tourist trap, then you gotta, and somebody wants to review you, I think that's fair. We got a lot of tourists coming in here, and they can spend their money in many other fine establishments. Foodie that I am, we have some great restaurants now. So I'm with Ramos on this. Write what you see, brother, and you taste. And
but
I'm not
some of
mad
it was
at
very
the manager
snarky.
writing.
Like that whole thing about the Holocaust and everything, that was made to make the waiter sound dumb.
Well, I'm not mad at the manager for snapping back at him. Let me just say that. But I am not mad at Ramos for telling us the truth and letting folks that come into town. Now, when they get it together, like the Top of the Hub got it together, rah, rah.
The manager's response would have been more better taken, I think, if it in any way argued against the substance of the review.
I know.
It just sort of said, "This is really mean. How dare you point out that we have very mediocre food? We've been working this model on unsuspecting tourists for a long time. Why are you trying to wreck it?" Instead of saying this was the one day out of the last 100 years where our usual oysters weren't there or whatever. I think that it's an absolutely legitimate service for a newspaper to point out, if something that has a reputation, it may have a bad reputation for people like you, but there are lots of people who still go there every day. Right. They deserve to have something show up when they Google, is the food at Union Oyster House any good? When they Google that, they should have a reasonable result. So good for the Globe.
Yeah, I felt bad about it just because I've had a chance a couple of times to chat with Joe Milano, the owner, and his family's owned it for many years. Lovely guy. So I feel bad on that level. But the reviewer's entitled to his opinion. And I, applaud the way the Globe handled this. When the manager wrote his scathing critique, it was linked to off of the homepage of the website. And so there was a dialogue back and forth. I think that's the best you can hope for. Critics have got to say what they think candidly. Hopefully they're not, Gawker-like critics who are just savage, horrible people looking to spread woe.
The comments were pretty vicious.
And the comments seem to reinforce the reviewer's take.
Exactly.
I had not been to the Union Oyster House since shortly after it opened. So,
190 years ago.
Yes, exactly. So I really can't comment on whether the review was accurate or not. But I have to say, there are so many reviews, whether it's of restaurants or whatever, that are just kind of, they don't quite take a strong stand. And what I really liked about this was that it took an extremely strong stand. And for that reason alone, I thought it was terrific. Now, one aspect of this I wanted to point out that I don't think anybody else has noticed. When Deborah First was the reviewer, you could not see her face. She had a bowl in front of her face in the picture. By the way, I used to work with her. I know what she looks like. If Nestor Ramos is trying out for this position, everybody knows what he looks like now. So every restaurant operator in town.
Interim.
Well, no, but apparently he's trying out, and he'd like to have this position. His picture's going to be up in every restaurant in Greater Boston, so they better be careful about that.
The interesting thing, this was kind of being likened to, remember that Guy Fieri restaurant in New York City?
Yes.
And it was a big push because
that was a wonderful review.
And it was a really awful, vicious, snarky review. And the same issue was made. Well, it's just, why are you reviewing one of these? I don't even remember the name of the restaurant.
Yeah. Well, you know what I'd like to see the Globe do? wait 6 months and then
go back.
and
Yes,
see
thank
if
you.
they respond.
That's
And if
exactly
they
right.
did in
That's
some
right.
positive
It's
ways,
going to be
That's
the same.
exactly right. And sometimes you just go to the place because it is a tourist, and that's okay. But you need to know: don't eat the food, buy the products, and go home.
right? Or just
You know.
just have a few cherry stones and a beer
right.
and be
Yeah.
done with
No,
it.
I had a lovely
Yeah.
tray of oysters recently, within the year.
Yeah, I've had good oysters there too. I don't get it.
All right, we're getting.
It's a little bit like the New York Times had another review recently of Per Se, the very famous
Oh, yeah.
restaurant where they
Thomas
took away
Keller.
Thomas Keller's. And Thomas Keller's response was not to say, "How dare you, New York Times? You know, we've been an institution in this city for all these years." It was to say, "We're sorry you had a bad experience. We're going to take that as
Come
fuel
back.
to try and get better."
Yeah, bingo.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, that is it for our show. Tell us what you think. Email us, tweet us, or leave a comment. We're always on at beatthepress.org.